My name is John Kazazis. I've operated ARS Abstract for this year has been 25 years. And I wanted to add on Bruce's conversation and Michael's conversation. Michael just said that with foreigners coming into the country and people buying real estate, you want a safe investment. You want a solid investment so that hopefully you can buy other investments. The way in which you ensure that that investment is safe is through title insurance. And what I wanted to talk about is how do you go about selecting a title insurance company in connection with a mortgage transaction or a conveyance transaction. Our process, how we basically process that work, the closing itself, and as well as the follow-up after the closing. And I want to just get into a few scenarios which I am personally aware of as far as trying to avoid claims that could become after the closing. So how do you choose a title company? Normally in a contract of sale, it's any reputable title company. But how do you define the word reputable? In the last 5 years, there was a company, Commonwealth Land Title, that operated for over 150 years. It filed for bankruptcy. It was acquired by another title company, the Fidelity National Title Insurance Company, which also acquired several other companies. In the last couple of years, Washington Title ceased to do business in New York. New Jersey Title ceased to do business in New York. Two large title insurance agencies no longer do business in New York. Liberty Title, TitleServe, large companies. The person who owned Liberty Title is right now facing a jail term. The person who owned TitleServe is basically involved with litigation right now that has not yet been finalized. So how do you go about choosing a title company? Reputation, long-standing reputation in the industry, basically the companies that they represent, reserves, something that sometimes is not very much thought out. There's companies that are coming in to New York with little or no reserves. The top 3 title companies out there, First American Title, Fidelity Title, Chicago Title, Stewart Title, the reserves are up there. So you want to make sure that in the event something doesn't happen, in the event that you do have a claim, that there is going to be a backup so that the investment is safe, as Michael referred to previously. The process, what do we do? Basically, when a contract is signed or a mortgage application is signed, we basically gather that information from our applicant. We basically do an examination of title. Title insurance differs from other insurance in that we basically try as best as possible to eliminate any possible claim that may happen post-closing, as opposed to other forms of insurance, which is a casualty determination. They basically assume what will happen based on the age of somebody or the health of somebody. We don't do that. We do as thorough a search as possible to try to identify problems and eliminate those problems. And if we are not in a position to eliminate those problems, we accept them from coverage if that's acceptable to the lender as well as the buyer's attorney. Once we basically gather that information, our business comes from the mortgage broker or the buyer's attorney, but most of my day is dealt with dealing with the seller's attorneys. Most of my deals are transactional deals, whereby we work with buyer attorney, seller's attorney, and the bank attorney. We basically work as hard as possible with the seller's attorney to try and clear all the problems prior to closing, prior to everybody going to the closing table, so that there is no problem and so that you can close. Some of the problems that I've had over the couple years, and some of them very, very, very recently, I just had a client call me, and the seller's attorney had in their contract that they were, if the buyer decided to use another company, and in the event that they had to escrow for any judgments in favor of the Environmental Control Board, that the seller's attorney had the right to order that title report with another company. My client called me up, he asked me my opinion, and I said, well, you have to be careful. What other company is it that he's going to insure it with? And is it a title company? Is it an agency? Is the underwriter sticking behind the agency? I said, let me just do a quick search. Let me tell you how many ECBs are on the property. It turned out that I think there were about, it was a builder. I think there was about $75,000, $80,000 in ECB judgments. On the exact property, the property itself, it was several $1,000s. I told them, if it's an agency, you have to be careful. Get a affirmative insurance from the underwriter that they're sticking behind this, that they are basically, they acknowledge that this is the problem and that they're going to insure over it. Because once you basically close, what happens if the agency is not there? What happens if the underwriter is not there? It's your problem. Some of the other problems I've dealt with, LLCs. One of the things I constantly on top of when we do transactions, I need to see the operating agreements prior to the closing. Basically, an LLC, when they convey property, you're not dealing with an individual, you're dealing with an organization, whereby that organization, the members are not identifiable by the public records. We depend upon the operating agreement. Many times when you review that operating agreement, there's special requirements as far as the conveyance of the real property. There could be a requirement as far as dealing with the death of a member. Where that interest is transferred to, you need some sort of amendment to the operating agreement, which basically maintains that the LLC will continue to exist so that they can convey title. Same thing with corporations. Basically, the consents. Again, there's nothing that's public record. You don't know who the partners are. You don't know who the stockholders are. You're basically dealing with the attorneys. You're trying to get as much information as possible from these people so that there is no claim post-closing. Another recent situation was a party died in title. The person died without a will. You have to be careful with that. Some companies will just, okay, we'll just check the owner for any liens. But when someone dies in title, whether they die intestate or testate, with or without a will, you have to basically check the heirs. We checked the heirs. We got that information. I noticed that there was a judgment. It was on a different address, but the judgment was very, very large. It was a very specific name. It came out to $1.8 million federal tax lien. I asked the seller's attorney about it. He said, yeah, I saw that. We got to get back to you on that one. And I kept on looking. The name just, something bothered me about the name. And I saw there was another address where they acquired another piece of property where that was their former address. I spoke to the seller's attorney. He says, yes, he did some time in federal prison, and that was the federal tax lien. So again, that's something that would carry over. So what we do is a thorough examination as possible to try to identify problems so that they don't come back to haunt our insured, whether it be the lender or whether it be the buyer. And again, there are certain things, fraud, which you try to do the best job that possible, but sometimes you can't get it. You could have powers of attorney that could be fraudulent. You could have satisfactions of mortgages that are forged. We just had a situation the other day. We recited 3 mortgages on the property. The seller's attorney emails me a copy of a SAT. I noticed that the SAT was dated 5 days before he sent it to me. I said, please deliver the underlying mortgage and the underlying note. He says, why? No company has ever asked me for that. I said, well, I'd like to know how that was satisfied without any identifiable transaction in the last 5 days. He said, well, I don't know if I can get it for you. I said, we're going to need it if you want to close. And I said, also, the satisfaction should have been delivered as a package. It should have been delivered with the underlying mortgage and note together with the satisfaction. It's a package. When you get the mortgage and note, the original, then you know the satisfaction has not been forged. That is an issue that title companies deal with all the time, forgeries. All consents, LLC consents to resolutions, corporation resolutions, all have to be notarized. There was talking about the Yankee Stadium game the other day, I just want to talk about one issue where it dealt with a building right near Yankee Stadium. It was an LLC. It was a recent conveyance from one LLC to another LLC. There were 3 mortgages on the property. All 3 mortgages were in foreclosure. I wasn't involved with the transaction. All 3 SATs were forged. Stipulations of discontinuance were forged. The LLC deed to another deed was forged, and it resulted in a $6 million claim that the title agency is still out there. It no longer writes for that underwriter, which canceled them. The underwriter had to pay that claim, and the person who perpetuated their fraud is presently in prison right now. So these are some of the things that go behind the scenes that people are not aware of, so that, as Michael mentioned, that your investments are safe, secure, and so that we can rely on real estate. So I know we're coming up to lunch hour, and I don't want to go on, but that's all I want to talk about.